Everyone, and welcome to weeks 13 and 14 of English 111. This week, our focus is going to be actually writing our first draft of our research paper, and I'm also going to be introducing the peer review discussion forum, which will get you to your final draft, which will be due on May 24th. This week, you are to read chapters 14 and 15 in the Bedford Researcher. Then you'll be working on creating a draft. You'll be turning that in to a peer review workshop, and you'll be reviewing your peers' papers using a peer review form. So let's talk a little bit about drafting your paper. As we've learned in the last couple of weeks, research writing isn't so much about the act of putting words on the paper. It's really about the process of identifying and learning about an issue and figuring out how you can join the conversation about that issue. Hopefully your outline provided you with a bit of a framework to make you think about how to develop your draft. Before you begin drafting, I want you to pull out your outline and review your purpose that you developed before that even. So why are you writing this paper? What's the point, right? And review the way you organized your points that you made in your outline. Is it the right order to put your subtopics in? Do you think those are going to be the most effective way to prove your point, to argue your thesis? Do you have sources to support what you're saying? And do those sources provide enough evidence to support your points? And do you have more than one or two sources that you're relying on throughout the paper? Do you have a variety of sources? Next thing you want to really think about is developing effective paragraphs. Effective paragraphs are much like miniature essays. They all focus on a central idea or theme. And in the most cases, in your besides your introduction and your conclusion, all of the body paragraphs of your research paper are really going to focus on proving one of the subtopics, one of the parts of the topic that you're going to work on proving to us in your paper. They should follow an organizational pattern, and many of these patterns are listed in our book in chapter 14. You want to make sure that you take a look at this. You want to use logos and pathos to capture your reader's attention and make your point. Remember that logos and pathos logos is the facts, and pathos is when you really put a human face on the issues. You want to use sources always to strengthen your argument so that whatever you're speaking about, you have authorities backing up what you're saying. You want to create a flow in your paper by using transitions between each paragraph, you can use words such as however, for example, and on page 236 there's a full list of all of these transitions. So I want you to review that while you're writing your paper. You want when the reader goes from one body paragraph to the other, they should feel like you are reflecting on what you said in the previous paragraph before you begin talking about the new topic in the next paragraph. Now, when you're drafting your introduction and conclusion, you want to think about a few more things. When you think about your introduction, you want to make sure that you realize that your introduction really sets up the framework for how your readers are going to understand how you are contributing to the conversation about your topic. So you really want to think about a strategy for presenting, really introducing your take on this issue, your position. And if you look at pages 238 and 239, there's some excellent examples. In all cases, you will need to state your thesis statement in your introduction, usually towards the end of the first paragraph. You want to make your paper easy to follow by providing a map to the main points or subtopics that you're going to be talking about in your paper. Oftentimes, this appears right in your thesis statement. One way to say it is this paper will cover 3 approaches to treating cancer of the bladder: chemotherapy, a combination of chemotherapy and radiation, and surgical removal of the organ. This statement states the 3 different subtopics that this paper is going to be about. You want your reader at all times to feel very orientated, right? And very, very clear as to what the progress of your paper is going to be. Finally, in drafting your conclusion, you want to reinforce your message, what you've been building towards throughout your entire paper. You want to share your final thoughts about the issue and your purpose for writing the paper. You'll do this by restating your thesis and how you've proven it, and then you're going to take it to a higher level by using one of the strategies found on pages 242 through 244. These are ways to really contextualize why you even wrote about this topic. What does it have to do with the rest of the world? What does it have to do with our culture or our society? So moving on to chapter 15, we're talking about effectively using sources in this chapter, which is really the heart of the research paper. Sources help you introduce ideas, provide evidence to support your points, provide examples, and really give you the ability to amplify a point that you're making in your paper. Sources can appear as quotations, which are exactly the same, exact words put in quotation marks in your paper. Paraphrase passages, that's where you restate someone else's words and cite them as a source. Summaries, where you talk about maybe you summarize a whole book, like you did in your annotated bibliography, and you cite the source. Or just numerical information, such as statistics. Maybe you want to talk about the current divorce rate in the U.S. You would still need to cite your source, even if you're giving a statistic. So how to use them effectively? There's a lot of great examples in our book of how to do so. But some of the main ways that you can use a quotation effectively in your document is to introduce an idea or argument. It's a really good way to do it. Or to contrast ideas or arguments. Maybe you're talking about how one person feels about your topic versus how another expert feels about your topic. You can use them to provide evidence for your argument. You can use them to align your argument with an authority. So to show that this authority agrees with what you're saying. You can use them to clarify points that you're making or to just provide an example. You want to always identify your sources. You use attributions and in-text citations to do so. So, for example, in this quotation, Pamela Cook argues, education reform is the best solution for fixing our public schools. In this example, you can see Pamela Cook is the person who's saying these words. And we know this because of the attribution, argues. If you look on page 252, there's a list of attributions that are most commonly used, and I suggest you keep this open while you're writing your paper. A really good idea whenever you introduce a quotation is afterwards you have to give an in-text citation. If you don't mention the name of the author, then you need to list the citation, which is in green here, as this would be Coke 22, and that's in the parentheticals with a period at the end. But because we identify Pamela Coke in the attribution, you don't have to restate her name as part of the citation. You want to always quote strategically in your paper. You don't want your paper to just be a patchwork of quotations, because that's not effective. You can quote a lot of different ways, but always use an attribution and contextualize a quotation. Don't just stick it in there. That's called orphaning a quote. If you just stick it in there, the reader doesn't know what to do with it. So always interpret the quote and then tell us what it has to do with your thesis. There's three different common ways to quote in your paper. You can use a partial quotation, which is as simple as 1 or 2 words, and the source information, all of those words have to appear in quotation marks, and then the source information is included at the end of the sentence in parentheticals. You can use complete quotations, which is usually 1 or 2 complete sentences, and you cite the source the same as a partial. Block quotations are extended quotations, and you want to use these sparingly in your paper. This is 4 or more typed lines of text. These are always indented 1 inch from the left-hand margin of the page, and there are no quotation marks in this type of quotation. You need to cite the source with the last name, page number, just as we do in every other citation. One thing to think about when you're using quotations is how to punctuate them correctly. You always want to use double quotation marks around partial or complete quotations. Do not use quotation marks around block quotations. Use single quotation marks to indicate quoted material within a quotation. When citation information is provided after a quotation, place the punctuation mark, such as a comma, period, or question mark, after the parenthetical citation. You want to use 3 spaced periods, these are called ellipses, to indicate an omission within a sentence, but you never use ellipses at either the beginning or the ending of a quotation. You always want to cite your sources. When in doubt, cite. Whenever you refer to a source in any way as you write your paper, you need to cite that source in MLA format. Chapter 21 provides an in-depth look at in-text citations and how to create a works cited page. Whenever you quote something or refer to another source, refer to a source in your paper, you need to always list the last name and page number in parentheticals after that quotation. As I've listed here, I have London. This is page 238, and that's who I'm referring to in my paper. This coincides to a entry in your works cited page. Your works cited page is at the end of your document. It's an extra page, and there's an example in chapter 21. And on this page, you list citations for each source you're citing, the full citation for each source you're citing in your paper. So, for example, I refer to Jack London's The Valley of the Moon when I'm quoting it in this paper. So, for readers to know how to get this source information, they just turn to the works cited page at the end of my paper, and they would find the full citation. There's many different ways to cite a source. It depends on the type of source, as we've been learning about. Remember when we cited the cereal boxes? There's many different ways to do so. You need to look up and see which is the best way to cite the document that you are citing. Just always use just try to do the best that you can to find the perfect match. And if you ever have questions, you can ask. So this gets you to the point of wanting to draft your paper. I will post a drafting worksheet under this week's content, but I've also listed it here. This kind of just gives you a guide of what to think about as you write each paragraph for your paper. Here I've only listed 3 body paragraphs, but of course you can use more than 3 in your paper. All right, here it is, the research paper assignment. Your draft is due on 5/12. That's this week from today. Your final paper will be an argumentative research paper that explores the topic you presented in your project topic form, and your topic must be arguable and related to a topic or theme found in the conscious reader. Your paper needs to be 6 to 8 double-spaced pages, written in Times New Roman 12-point font, and in MLA format. You can see a sample paper on Chapter 21 of the Bedford Researcher. Overall requirements are you need at least 4 academic sources that are referred to using MLA in-text citations and that are listed on a works cited page at the end of your paper. Your paper must use ethos, pathos, and logos to argue your thesis. Your paper must have an introduction where you introduce your topic and have a focused thesis that clearly states the topic you are writing about and the position you are arguing about this topic. Your paper must contain several body paragraphs that introduce subtopics that are proven with evidence, and your paper must have a conclusion where you clearly state how you've proven your thesis. All right, once you've completed your draft, you need to upload it as part of the peer review workshop. The first step is to visit the peer review workshop. It'll be a discussion forum like we've had all throughout the semester. And you're going to post your paper as an attachment to your post. And feel free to write a note to your peer if you have any questions for them. The second step is to review the list of peers that have already posted their paper. You can't do this until you have posted your own, okay? And you're going to choose one peer to respond to. You're only required to peer review one peer's paper. Once you respond to the post, download your peers. You're going to respond to the post and say, indicate that you will be responding to this paper, so nobody else chooses it. Then you're going to fill out the peer editing checklist listed under content for week 13. You're going to email the filled out peer review checklist and an edited version of their paper to your peer by the end of the week. Step 5. In order to receive full credit for this assignment, you will also need to turn in the peer review that you completed to the peer review Dropbox by 5/19. In step 6, please revise your paper based on your peer review. So, your final papers for this class will be due on 5/24. Your draft is due on 5/19. Your peer review, on 5/12. Your peer review is due on 5/19, and you will only have a few days after that to create your final paper, which is due on 5/24. Please note, the reason why it's 5/24 is this is the last day of class for your semester. I cannot extend this deadline. You must turn in your paper by 5/24. If you feel rushed by this, you can turn in your draft early and begin your peer review before 5/12. It's up to you. All right, good luck. I look forward to reading your papers, and I will see you online.